You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
Do you want to experience the thrill of a Packers game at Lambeau Field? If so, be sure to get your game tickets from the longtime trusted source in Wisconsin, Ticket King. Visit their locations in Milwaukee and Green Bay, or just go to their website, theticketking.com. Again, that's theticketking.com.
Check New York Bozo! New York Bozo! New York Bozo!
I got to get my biceps a little bigger.
Yeah, you can always work on that.
Or I could sure use a hot dog with chili.
You know what time the game starts? Hey, you got any left-handed footballs? We need to fire him. Is anybody else tired, or is it just me? Good thing I'm in shape. You got any eligibility left? I got some advice for y'all. Take 2 weeks off, then quit.
Pack to the Future is brought to you by The Ticket King. Whether you're making the trip to see Aaron Rodgers and the Packers play at legendary Lambeau Field, you want to see Giannis and the Bucks at the beautiful Fiserv Forum, or the Badgers, Brewers, or any concert tickets you might need, The Ticket King is your source no matter the occasion. Visit them online at theticketking.com and search their selection for yourself. And remember, there's no such thing as a sellout when you can go to The Ticket King. One more time, that's theticketking.com.
Once again, we are back with another episode from the PTTF podcast. I am your host, Duke. I am joined by Matt. Say hello to our fans, Matt.
Hello, everybody.
We're going to be talking about today the Packers go and move on to 8-2 with a 5-1 record at home. They win against the Carolina Panthers with a victory, 24-16. Man, it was a game, Matt, that I think the Packers started off really good. You know, they were looking sharp. You know, were getting the flow going, and you know, towards the end of the game, you know, and we'll talk about this, break it down a little bit more. Towards the end of the game, I think they kind of let Carolina back into it with some decisions, some play calling, different things like that. But overall, man, another victory for the Green Bay Packers. How do you feel about it, bro?
Hard not to feel great after any kind of win like that. You know, Carolina obviously has had their ups and downs this season, but they're still, you know, they're a playoff looking team. You know, they have some really talented guys, Christian McCaffrey. You know, that was the big question coming into this game. And, you know, and I said it last week, he would get his, and he certainly did, but the Packers did just enough on that front to kind of keep this game in check. On a snowy day, you know, it was going to be kind of a little bit more of a battle on the ground, and there was a decent amount of yards through the air, but, you know, the running backs were really the stars of the show yesterday. So, yeah, there was some questionable play calling at times. We'll get into that a little bit more, but to win, especially in front of your home crowd, and yeah, I can't be too upset about it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a win is a win, you know, and that's the thing is in this league, they are, to quote, you know, we got to start coming up with some LaFleurisms, but, you know, he's been saying recently, you know, there's, you know, a win in this league, it's never easy, you know, and, you know, their goal is to just go 1-0 each week. And they managed to accomplish that for the 8th time this season, you know, and, you know, I think we can actually kind of get in the comfortable talk of starting to talk about playoffs and playoff potential positioning and things like that, you know, and so that's something that's incredibly encouraging to actually be talking about in early to mid-November.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of a big thing right now, right? Like, this is another winning, you know, this is another team with a winning record that the Packers have taken down. I would say, is Philly above 500? But I don't really remember it, but I mean, that's the only other team where, you know, other than that, they've played a lot of teams with winning records and come victorious. So now you can kind of start to have that conversation a little bit more about, all right, they're 8-2, and there are now really only 3 teams at the top trying to vie for those first round buys. So, and we'll kind of see a huge matchup with huge playoff implications in a couple of weeks when the Packers go to San Francisco. So it's exciting. You know, this is. You know, every team right now has its flaws. We're in week we're in week 10 right now. So, you're starting to see trends with each team. You're kind of seeing, New Orleans kind of lost a tough game yesterday. So, I say it pretty much every week on this podcast. It's an any week kind of league where any team can beat any, even the top teams like New Orleans. So it's good that the Packers escaped with a victory yesterday against a very good football team. And it's, we're getting to the point where we can start talking about playoffs, because right now, even if the Packers kind of drop a few games, they're likely going to be a playoff team.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I read a stat today that I think the Packers' chances currently of making the playoffs are in the 90th percentile. So I think they're looking fine. The Eagles do have a winning record at 5-4 currently. And so, to your point, the Packers have beaten some good teams. Something I had read, the Panthers were 3-1 before they went into Green Bay on their away games. And so this was a team that has proven they knew how to play on the road. And, the Packers did, like what you said, they did just enough. There was times in the game where I felt were really good. There was times where, it was, hindsight, and I tweeted something about that yesterday, the hindsight people of questioning, the goal line, of the decision at the end of the half to go for that. And, the truth was I have no qualms about the play call. I thought it was, these guys were opening up holes all day. Mm-hmm. Hey man, you have a mistake on the goal line. They capitalized on it. Really, it would have had a huge swing had the Packers gotten that score before half. But, it was really kind of one of those decisions to go for it and not be, not shoot yourself in the foot too much because of the risk. So I for one, am on the train to go for it in that situation. How'd you feel about it?
100%. Honestly, I was yelling "go for it" as they were initially bringing out the kick team. I was like, oh, they're just gonna resign to the fact that they're going to halftime with a 7-point lead. Right. But yeah, at that point, you break the game open. You just try your best to make it a 2-score game. Going into halftime, you get the ball at the end of half. I loved the call to go for it. I didn't like the play call itself. Okay. This was, you didn't have your two best players on the field in Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams. You were basically signaling to the defense that you were running the ball up the gut. I didn't love the play call from that standpoint. Typically at the goal line, you try and punch it in, and I understand that, but you have a little bit of room for error with that. So I would have been a little bit more creative. They've done a pretty good job with some misdirection and some play action, moving the other direction. So a little disappointed from that standpoint, but I mean, we're probably critiquing this a lot more if the Packers lose that game yesterday. So I take it with a grain of salt. So happy they went for it. Definitely want to see a little bit better execution moving forward, because, oh boy, was that an ugly play.
Right. Well, most definitely. And I think we can all agree that, the confidence that LaFleur had to go for it with his running backs and his running game. And we'll just kind of get into this. Aaron Jones with another 3-touchdown performance. His shiftiness in the red zone is an absolute weapon. And I definitely agree with you, not having him on the field, not having Adams on the field. Definitely, it made it very predictable. And, Jamal Williams said something post-game, basically where he said, hey, we believe we can run through anybody and that, they can't stop us. That mentality of we can actually show you, or you could know what we're going to run, but we're just going to overpower you and we're going to do it. I think these guys have that mentality, and I think it's the right mentality to have. It was just poor execution. It happens, Yep. But these guys both average, above 4 yards per carry, 93 yards for Jones, 63 for Williams. Man, I mean, this is a legit thunder and lightning, backfield, man, that, we're very fortunate to have, especially as Packer fans, as the real Green Bay weather starts to kick in.
Yep. And it's going to be great moving forward into these winter months where, the other thing is they're going to be playing some pretty hard-nosed defenses. So having both of those guys in the backfield is only going to help even more when you're going against. They're going to go against San Francisco. They're going to go against Minnesota. They're going to go against Chicago again. So having that two-headed monster is going to be huge. But kind of like you said, they wanted to kind of run through the teeth of the defense, and it kind of it got me thinking back to the Ice Bowl way back when Vince Lombardi's talking about if you can't gain a yard, you don't deserve to be champions. So I'm hoping for better execution on that standpoint when they're in the down and distance, because they have had their struggles in the red zone as far as trying to run the ball. Obviously, Aaron Jones has helped a lot of that, being able to kind of punch it in from a few more yards out. But, it has helped that LaFleur's gotten really creative with Aaron Jones. And that's kind of why I was so disappointed when it was Jamal Williams and no Adams is, all this creativity that Matt LaFleur has created, all of this, it gets the defensive coordinator into kind of this mode of, all right, I need to be thinking about all these different things that LaFleur could be crafting up right now. And it just basically signaled this one thing. So I was disappointed in that. I would have been happy if they went with like a 2-back set or something like that and, use this two-headed monster to its full capability. But, I'll settle for both of them having a really great game. Honestly, Jamal Williams, I believe he's still the touchdown leader after last night. I don't think Dalvin Cook got more than a touchdown. So good to have one of the best running backs in the league in the backfield right now.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Jones is absolutely killing it, and he's got, I believe it was, Wes Hodkiewicz that tweeted out something to the effect that, he's already established a new high in rushing attempts. So, for those of you that were pounding the table last year to get Jones on the field, mission accomplished. He's already, surpassed his career high in rushing attempts on this season. He's also on pace for 900 plus yards, probably 17 touchdowns on the ground, and over 500 yards receiving. So Aaron Jones is the real deal. We knew he was. Obviously in his previous system, he just wasn't as featured as much as he is now. And now we're really getting to see, the true threat, that he is back there. I mean, he's there on one play, and I think I tweeted about it yesterday. I just love the fact that there could be a play that's almost completely blown up. Aaron Jones finds a way to turn it into a positive gain. Yesterday, I think it was off. It was a run off to the right side. I'm not sure, where the penetration came from, if it was Bulaga or Lindsley or Turner, but there was some penetration in the backfield. Aaron Jones just, kind of has this little jump step where he'll hop backwards, and he kind of stiff arms the guy, gets the edge, turns it upfield, acts like he's going out of bounds, jukes back in to finish the play for another 3 or 4 yards. And I'm going, are you kidding me? I mean, this guy is so exciting, man. And Packers fans, you're watching a great one. We're beginning to see another great player emerge on this team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And we kind of haven't had too many guys emerge over there yet. And so it's just another really awesome thing to see for young Aaron Jones, man.
Yeah, and I mean, when's the last time we've seen a running back like this? Amon Green's probably the last one where I can think of that was kind of a threat, both from a running perspective and out of the backfield as a receiver.
Yeah.
And right now, I know he didn't have a ton of receptions yesterday, but he's probably the second best the second most consistent receiver on this team, essentially. So, although I do want to get to everybody's favorite tight end in a moment here, who had a solid game yesterday.
Yes.
But no, it's great to have that weapon come out of the backfield because it just creates a lot of mismatches. And like you said, he has that ability to just, make something out of nothing and make guys miss. I mean, it's such a key for this LaFleur offense, having that one step, one cut ability. It just opens up this offense so much more. And then on top of that, you have Devontae Adams on the boundary. And on top of that, you have one of the best quarterbacks to ever do it. So it only makes this offense more dangerous. And, when we get into the winter months a little bit more here, that's going to be huge for them to, when it's not going to be as easy to throw the football. So
Right.
He had a great game yesterday. We're going to probably see, and it'll probably frustrate fans a little bit because you're going to definitely see more of a load management, including Jamal Williams a little bit more in these games, just because Jones has been getting a ton of carries, but going into these winter months, they're going to have to rely so heavily on that run game that you're going to see a lot more split carries between those two.
Right. And it did happen yesterday. I think I had tweeted out right before half. I was kind of like, where was Aaron Jones on that drive? And I think they were just conserving him, and that's okay. We're going to have to deal with that. I'm okay conserving him the whole drive and then maybe letting Jones come in, around, obviously in the red zone, around the goal line. But either way, yeah, you're definitely right. They're going to have to, maybe scale it back just a little bit so that both of these guys are staying fresh, because there's probably going to be even more running, up ahead. And so tons of credit to the offensive line. I think they bullied the Panthers front at times. There were some huge holes created, and they were really, pushing back, like you said, a pretty formidable Panthers front, 7. And, it was awesome to see. But to kind of flip the script a little bit, we'll start talking about the receiving game. One thing that you did mention a little bit was both running backs actually didn't have a catch yesterday. And so that was a little bit different, because they have been threats in the backfield, certainly on the perimeter as pass catchers as well. But Adams and Jimmy Graham, they amassed 177 of the Packers' 233 yards through the air. So go for it, man. Give me your thoughts.
Well, it was the return of Davante Adams, really. Like last week, everybody was saying, even himself, he wasn't quite ready to come back yet.
Right.
Really, just trying to get back on the field and test things out last week. And unfortunately, it just came in a game where the Packers didn't bring their A game. So you were a little concerned that, how far off is he? And I think yesterday quelled a lot of those concerns. He had 10 targets and 7 receptions, and that 38-yarder, it was on second and 26, I think. He just absolutely put his guy in a turnstile. That was just some precision route running from Davante Adams, and it's something they've absolutely missed. You just don't have that consistency on the outside. There again, Alan Lazard had a couple of great plays yesterday, but he just can't consistently do it like Davante Adams can. So this offense that's been operating at such an efficient rate the last couple of weeks without Davante Adams is getting Davante Adams back. Like, this is just all of a sudden you're adding one of the top 5 wide receivers to a top 5 offense already without him. So it's they're going to go into this San Francisco game. It's going to be a grind. It's going to be an ugly football game at times, but as long as they have that threat on the outside and they have that threat in the backfield, it's going to be huge for them. But my big takeaway from yesterday was Jimmy Graham reverting back to his 2011 self on that one reception over the top. Rodgers looks at Geronimo Allison, kind of signals for him. Luke Kuechly, kind of throwing Luke Kuechly off a little bit because he's signaling the defense for. I think they've made a joke. There was a tweet going around about Clay Matthews and Cam Newton going into this game, where Clay, had thought that Newton was signaling a certain play call. And, Cam Newton was like, "Watch this," and of course it was a Texas route to Christian McCaffrey for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Very similarly, Luke Kuechly thought he saw something in the offense as Rodgers was signaling to Allison, and it was a perfect route over the middle to Jimmy Graham for that was like a 48-yarder that he had there.
Yes,
it was
sir.
just thing of absolute beauty. So good to see the youthful Jimmy Graham come there with a little bit of yards after the catch. Would love to see a little bit more of it, but you can't win them all. So it was good to see a little bit more of the youthful Jimmy Graham out there, because at times they're going to need it.
Right. Yeah. That was the longest play of the game, that play to Graham. That was a 48-yarder. And something that was so awesome to see was that, my mind gets boggled with people that, call players all kinds of names, and, Jimmy Graham is doing his role and he is blocking much better. You've seen him when Jones will get on the edge. You've seen him when, another receiver makes the catch. The effort is there. Now, I want to make an excuse for him as far as I think it's difficult to judge a player's effort based on just what you see. In other words, effort is kind of a mentality. It's kind of a heart thing. It's kind of a passion thing. And so, hey, man, if the guy whiffs, some of that's just technique, man. It's bad technique. But there's been, I want to say just effort's not the word I'm looking for, but just, more of an emphasis from Graham on his blocking and doing what he does with the yards after the catch and stretching the field. It just looks like, he's starting to kind of, come alive a little bit more. And Aaron Rodgers said something very, very key to this point, and that was that Matt LaFleur has found each player's strengths, and he's given each player a defined role. And so there's times when, if we're expecting Jimmy Graham to be the Mercedes Lewis of the team, you're going to be highly mistaken. It's just not going to happen that way. And I feel like some Packers fans say, well, yeah, but if he's on the field, he's supposed to do that. Well, yeah, given a play, but that's not his strength. But yeah, he's 1/11th of the offense. He's got to try to do his role the best that he can in the given situation to keep defenses honest and what have you. But, I thought he looked markedly better yesterday. I mean, he had 2 receptions for 59 yards. Again, he had the long of the 48-yarder, which was most of his work. But, the guy can get after it. Adams, again, big-time game. 7 receptions, 118 yards, 16.9 average. He's yet to get into the end zone this season, which is crazy because, he's been in, I believe, I think he was pretty much the lead leaguer for the last 3-4 seasons as far as, touchdowns, receiving touchdowns. But that being said, I think he's on his way back up. This bye, I think, comes at a perfect time for him. Just to really fully heal that turf toe thing. And hopefully coming against San Francisco, he'll have a big game.
Yeah, and, just getting back into the swing of things, but even after missing, 4 games, he could still very easily eclipse 1,000 yards. So I take the touchdown numbers with a grain of salt. That
right.
Those kind of numbers, they can vary from year to year, and they're never that consistent. So, and in a new offense, that might not necessarily be the priority look, is getting your wide receivers those looks closer to the red zone. So it really is just very situationally dependent. So I think he's doing exactly what he needs to. He is doing his work between the 20s, and that's been huge for this offense. So yeah, I think they'll keep moving this forward. They'll keep having those pop-up games from Jimmy Graham. Like he could probably go catchless next week, but the offense or 2 weeks from now, and the offense will still do fine because somebody else, emerged that game. Like it could be Alan Lazard, who had a couple of huge games in there. So that's, something I love about this offense is it's not the same thing every single week. They don't have to rely on any one thing because LaFleur, like you said, has been using the skill sets of the players that he has a little bit more to his advantage. So I think anybody expecting Graham to put up, 1,000-yard receiving years anymore, it's just not what he's going to be. So I think he's having an okay year. Obviously not necessarily worth the money that he's getting paid to do that necessarily. But I mean, right now he's probably on track to get, around 600 or 700 yards receiving. So I consider that a win for this offense. He's got a couple of touchdowns in there. Probably should have had another touchdown yesterday that was called back. But yeah, this offense is just going to keep finding ways to, improve, moving the ball around a little bit more. And now that Devontae Adams is back and that Alan Lazard has kind of, shown to be a pretty reliable receiver, that I wouldn't even call it a drop yesterday because whatever that review was, I'm not 100% sure. But, he's proven to be a pretty reliable receiver for Rodgers. It's exciting to see, what this offense has in store in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, hey, one of the things that was awesome to note was, listen, they had a really down week the previous week down in LA. That is a no-brainer. But something that was encouraging was the Packers' yards per play on offense almost doubled from last week, from a 3.8 yards per play to 6.7 this week. And so even though the Panthers actually had more total yards by about 20 yards, they had more yards through the air as well. The Packers were more efficient because they threw for about 7.3 per pass. So, this Packers offense is exactly what you're saying. It is a offense that has the ability to change itself, to kind of adapt from week to week, given the defense that they're playing. And basically, like Rodgers said in his presser, if they need to throw for 400 yards per game, they can do it. If they need to run for, 150 plus yards on the ground, they can do it. Whatever it is that they need to do that week to win the game, they're going to do it. And I love that flexibility and that creativity because, again, it's making teams not be able to kind of throw the whole kitchen sink at one thing. They are not a one-dimensional team by any stretch of the imagination. And I think something we'd all like to see some of these other receivers, kind of have just more consistency. If anything that, is I don't want to say concerning, but again, because I think it's kind of the way the ball is distributed. But, we would just like to see more consistency. We'd like to see, a couple guys with, maybe over, 70 plus yards, receiving a game, whereas it sometimes seems a little bit tilted to just one guy. But, all in all, man, I mean, we're nitpicking stuff at that point,
Yep. And that's the nature as us as fans, is we're kind of like we're fickle beasts, right? Like we, in games that kind of look ugly, we're going to try and find ways to be like, oh yeah, this wasn't necessarily 100%. Like yesterday, somebody will point out that Valdez-Scantling didn't have a single catch. Well, yeah, it was also, you don't take into consideration that it was snowing yesterday and he's a deep threat wide receiver, so that's not necessarily going to be what your play call is going to be. It's very situational, right?
Right.
So, I take all of that with a grain of salt. I'm still excited to see, when we're going into the winter months. Obviously, we're going to the last couple of games will be in domes or in California. So there aren't going to be too many games that are going to be outdoors. But going into these winter months and then in the playoffs, hopefully, knocking on wood here, if they get a first round bye, they're going to have to get a little bit more creative on the play calling front, and they've shown that they can do that. So they're not doing it with any one thing, and that's good because now you've put a lot of that on film where you can be a little bit more unpredictable, and you're not necessarily under the Mike McCarthy years where you were going to have 3 wide receivers out, 1 tight end, 1 running back, and there was a good chance that they were going to run isolation routes for each one of those wide receivers. That's not this offense anymore. And that, now they have a little bit more, they have a little bit more natural picks, and they have a lot of, misdirections. So it's going to be really interesting to see now that, and with the colder temperatures and a colder ball, what happens. But, I have a lot of confidence in LaFleur.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, he is off to an amazing start for his young career. And, I think it's something that, we are very fortunate to have had no drop off, but actual, legit improvement, on both sides of the ball, and actually see this team as a top contender in the NFC. I don't think there's hardly anyone that thought that this would be the kind of season that we'd be experiencing right now. But hey, man, we're here and we're all in for it. So let's kind of just to switch a little bit to the defensive side of the ball. Kenny Clark was the highest graded player on defense last night. He had a 89.8 grade. And, man, he wrecked the Panthers front. He had 10 pressures, almost had that sack. He would have had that sack, but, man, Preston Smith was just too quick off the edge. So I feel bad for Kenny on that one because I think he got robbed a little bit by his own guy. But, he's a selfless dude, man, and he's getting the job done there in the middle, man. Talk to me about what you've seen just on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, going into this game, we knew Christian McCaffrey was just going to get his. So it was just about how you could limit that and how, could the Packers get out to a decent lead? And they did. They got out to a 21-10 lead. And, after that, it's the Panthers playing from behind. So they couldn't necessarily run the ball like they would have liked to. So that was huge. That played right into the Packers' hands. So, Kenny Clark has, a lot has been made about his lack of production the last couple of weeks. But he's played the most snaps of any defensive lineman this entire year. Yep. It's tough when you're that big of a guy taking on that many snaps to be that disruptive. You just get tired. You're a big boy. You're not conditioned like these outside linebackers or these DBs are. So
no,
I give him a lot of credit. He played that many snaps yesterday and he still made a huge impact on the game. Another player that I think made a huge impact on the game, obviously Preston Smith had the 2 sacks. He's the first one to the 10 sack mark of this, this edge rushing group. So I think his contribution to the rest of the team was like Rolexes for the entire defense.
Yeah.
Man, I would love to have that kind of disposable income, but
right.
They did just enough on that. The Panthers still got a lot of yards. This defense has kind of predicated themselves on bend but don't break, and they had those opportunities yesterday. They had that fumble recovery. They had that tip drill to Tramon Williams. So, against a team that very much has one of the best running backs in the league in Christian McCaffrey and has played pretty well throughout the year, they did just enough to slow him down.
Yeah, something you said, and Ibrahim Campbell, kudos to him. He forced a fumble there, from McCaffrey. Fortunate for the Panthers, the offensive linemen were right on his heels, and they just got to that ball first. But, yeah, man, I mean, these guys are doing awesome. To speak of the Smith brothers, I mean, this is complete turnaround at the outside linebacker position. I mean, this is not even close. I read today the 2018 duo of Matthews and Perry combined for 5 sacks. The 2019 Smiths have combined for 18.5 sacks. And like you said, they're gifting Rolexes to the rest of the defense on behalf of Preston. I heard Tramon Williams said, he was like, oh, really? He goes, well, I'm going to add another one to my collection, And I thought that was funny, man, because, these guys, the energy, man, and the drive, the camaraderie, I really feel like this unit, can really be it's funny because I don't think we've seen their best yet. I mean, I think they can get better. There's a lot of young ascending players. Smith and Smith are barely in their 5th season. I mean, these are guys that still are in the thick of their prime of their careers. Kenny Clark is a young stud. You got Martinez, you've got, King and Alexander, who've shown really strong flashes. And then you got the back end, Amos and Savage, who are, I think, some really quality players as well. I mean, this defensive unit can only get better, man, which is crazy to think about. But, it's something that, the bend but not break, like, yeah, I get it. I think I tweeted out something today. It's tough to not give up big yardage plays in an offensive favored league. And so the truth is that stops are stops. Red zone defense, where they're forcing turnovers, they're kind of shutting teams out, they're holding them to fewer points. I mean, dude, this is crucial defense, played at crucial times. And you know what, man, I'll take it. I'll take it any day of the week.
And I think you alluded to something. This is still a very youthful defense. I know they added 3 guys in free agency in Amos and the Smiths, but like you said, Kevin King's in his 3rd year, Alexander's in his 2nd year, Savage is a rookie. Kenny Clark is in his 4th year.
Right.
So this is still a very young defense that can only get better. And the fact that they're turning the ball over as much as they are just leads for more room for improvement. And this is the other thing is all these guys are going to still be under contract next year, and they're only going to get better, and they're going to have another draft class that's going to come in here. So this unit could get significantly better. So I know there are a lot of growing pains associated with it. The run defense isn't the strongest right now. They're giving up a few big plays here and there, but that's just young player development. Like they're just going to do that. Jair Alexander takes a lot of risks. You know what happens when players get a lot more snaps? They take calculated risks. They're not going to give up those big plays as much. So, I take those plays that Alexander and King kind of give up lots of yards on as great learning experiences, because guess what? They're going to learn from that, and they're going to look at the tape and be like, all right, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that there, and they're only going to be better for it. So I think you still have a lot of other players that are getting their first real look at, playing time. So Montravius Adams, he's getting a lot more reps right now, and he's looked pretty good at times. So,
right.
Dean Lowry, same thing. He's had some really good moments, a pretty solid play. And we're failing to mention somebody else who really hasn't played much because he's learning to play almost an entirely different position, and that's Rashawn Gary. He played defensive end with his, he played with his hand in the dirt in college, and now he's being asked to stand up as an edge rusher. So
right.
This is all encouraging stuff. People take it as very discouraging because of how many yards they give up or how many big plays they give up. And the fact that they're still turning the ball over and winning football games and, at times make pretty flashy plays, you love to see that.
Right. Yeah. To all the people that are dogging, a pick like Gary and saying, oh, that this guy, he's already a bust and blah, blah, blah. Listen, the Packers put themselves in a phenomenal situation. I believe Aaron Nagler, somebody said this. Basically, he said, Rashawn Gary has the opportunity to learn behind two quality pros in the Smith brothers. Let's not get ahead of ourselves and start saying that this guy, is a bust and all these kinds of things. And you got the other guys, you got King and you got Jair, and, you've got a guy like Josh Jackson who's really been hidden this season, but, a lot of that was due to injury. But, man, there's a lot of guys that are only going to get better. And we cannot get hasty. We cannot get impatient. This team is still revolves around, the draft and develop, system. They added some and acquired some free agents this offseason, which was certainly some bigger splashes and more than most than we've seen in years prior for many, many years. But they are banking on these guys developing in their second and third and fourth years. Mm-hmm. Come on, let's go back to last season. Who was the Packers sack leader?
Kyler
Fackrell, man, Lord Sackrell. And this guy doesn't do almost much of anything until when? His fourth year. And it was like third, whatever it was.
Third year,
his third year. We didn't see much from him at all. And all of a sudden, he's the guy that jumped out to the front. So, again, I think the Packers are in a very fortunate position to have guys learning and emerging in the depths of this defense that I think are only going to step up in the future. We can't get ahead of ourselves yet. Everybody's trying to replace Martinez already. Everybody's trying to, just get ahead of the game. And, I think the Packers are in prime position, man. But the defense has been really solid. They held a formidable Panthers team to 16 points yesterday, man. And that was solid.
Yeah, and another note, and I'll kind of close the book on the Rashawn Gary talk here after this, but, I would have loved it if Green Bay just kind of said, we're essentially redshirting him. We're just going to give him a year to just kind of learn the position, because rushing the passer was something he was not asked to do in college very much. And, he's just learning a pass rushing repertoire right now. So, He's learning a new position. He's learning how to play. I mean, how to just rush the passer. He's done a great job when he's been asked to be a run defender. He is really good at that role. So when he's been asked to play that, he's done a very stellar job. When he's been asked to rush the passer, it looks like somebody who has a lot of athleticism that doesn't know how to rush the passers. So, that kind of stuff takes time. And, oh, by the way, one of the free agents that the Packers acquired this offseason didn't have 8.5 sacks until his last year of his rookie contract. So, Zadarius Smith, has developed into a good pass rusher. Yep. This is what happens when you do a draft and develop strategy. That was what the Baltimore Ravens were based on. They do the exact same thing out there. Yeah. So give it time. For the love of God, give it time. Right. He's gonna get there. But yeah, he's a really talented kid. He's a hard worker from everything they've said. First guy in, last guy out. And he's willing to learn from these guys. They were talking about how he was calling Zadarius and Preston, in the off season, trying to break down films. So just relax and give them time.
Yeah. Yep. It's relaxed season amongst the Packers fan base because, there's a lot of stuff that I think they need to relax with, and, not to put a damper on this game, but yeah, we read all the stuff and I'm getting to the point, man, where, I'm going to just have to start, putting filters on my account and blocking comments about certain stuff because it is a little much to see at times. It's like, wow, can we not be grateful for an 8-2 start, And so let's just keep that going. I want to shift gears a little bit, talk about a little bit. I think we've talked about a bunch of great things thus far. Talk about a little bit of the bad and ugly from the game. One of the things that, really stood out to me, I didn't realize it until I was just kind of looking over the stats this afternoon, was there were no kick or punt returns. And, I think Sean Menenga was kind of asked a little bit about the Packers teams, special teams almost kind of playing scared. And he kind of said that was on him where he felt at times, he was just trying to play conservative. And, this Packers special team is the one real unit that, we're having a little bit of trouble identifying, where they're going with this. And, I think something for me, just my 2 cents on it, I think they are not wanting to, they're kind of like the unit that steps on the field that just is trying to not screw up. Last year, Josh Jones had a ton of penalties on special teams. We had obviously bad decisions by our returners at times and things like that. And I feel like this unit is sort of copying that, saying, hey, well, we're not going to repeat those mistakes, but we're not necessarily going to do much either in trying to take the risk of advancing the ball. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you feel that's more of their confidence or lack of confidence in their returners, or is it just, maybe the lack of opportunities? I don't know. What are your thoughts on the special teams?
Boy, it's a loaded question because I think a lot of it is, I think you mentioned a really good point. They're playing not to lose the game on that front. I think just, be smart about it. Take the field position that you're given. If they're kicking in the end zone, just let it hit the end zone and take it at the 25. Or on punts, just fair catch it, just put the ball in Aaron Rodgers' hands, right? Mm-hmm. But, I think you bring up a good point. The coverage hasn't been great. And I think a lot of that kind of boils down to they don't have a ton of depth from that standpoint. And they lost 2 of their best special teamers. They had Tremont Smith, who is one of their best kick returners, and he got knocked out of the game with a concussion. Mm-hmm. And then Ty Summers was also in the concussion protocol, and he's another one of their special teamers. So, special teams, because, there isn't a lot of your starting talent that's playing special teams, it's really dependent on how deep of a team you are. And, at certain positions, the Packers are deep, but in, one of them that's not the deepest is the linebacking core. And that's, where a lot of your special teamers kind of come from. So outside of the starters, there isn't a ton of talent behind, the likes of the Smiths or the, Blake Martinez's or the BJ Goodsons. So I think from that standpoint, it's tough you wanted to try and gain a little bit more field position in those, on those special teams plays, but you also don't want to cost your team the game in those plays. So, and especially with your best returner out, it's just tough. And I don't blame them for playing a little bit more conservative of a game plan from that standpoint.
Yeah, I guess, and I think about special teams right now. I was rewatching the, I believe it was the 2013 matchup between the Packers and the Cowboys, and it's what I just do in my downtime, Matt. So I'm rewatching this game, and if you recall correctly, this is the Matt Flynn game.
Yep.
Where, he leads this miracle comeback. I believe it's 26-3 at halftime. And something that just really stuck out to me was Micah Hyde, man. Micah Hyde had some really, really solid returns in the punt game. And, I just saw, a portion of it, and I was like, man, the Packers are just missing that guy right now. I'm not even sure that Smith is that guy as a returner. And I'm not sure that, that player is really on the roster. Obviously it takes two, it takes the blocking unit, and of course it takes the returner. But, this is something that, I think the Packers are going to have to address in the offseason. I would not mind seeing them really go after a kind of a receiver, slash returner in the future, but for the meantime, I think as long as they're getting good field position on their, fair catches and or, with J.K. Scott, putting the other team, in a bad position, and the Packers in good position from that standpoint, I'm okay with it, because at the end of the day, I think we would rather all not have the mistakes. And unfortunately, I'm going to bring this up, the play like Ty Montgomery had last year against the Rams, very unfortunate play for him. Really, I think his career as well, but he's not the kind of guy that's going to let that, stop him. He's still doing what he's doing, and he's trying to make the most of it. But that being said, they're going to need to really have to get this unit doing something, because the good teams, Matt, that are going to be winning games in the playoffs are going to be firing on all three phases. I don't think there's going to be necessarily a two-dimensional, there's going to be two-dimensional teams in the playoffs, solid offense, solid defense. But, there's going to be teams out there that are going to have strong special teams play, and that could come into factor in the future for the Packers. And so they need more. I think they need a little more out of that unit.
Yeah, they need a little bit more out of it. And it's not impossible to win with bad special teams, but it makes it that much harder to try and win the field position battle. So I look to them to improve week over week, and it is a new special teams coordinator. So, and there have been some injuries a little bit here. So,
right.
I'll give it a little bit of time before I'm like, this is a huge concern for me, because right now, the two phases that I want them to be the best, the best that they can be at, have been playing well, and they're going to win a lot of football games doing that. So as long as they're, the special teams aren't costing them games, I'll let it slide. But the second it starts to, we'll probably have to have a larger conversation about it, because it does become more of a concern then.
Yeah, most definitely. One of the last things that I had here on my notes was the ugly thing that has kind of been somewhat of a consistent thing, I think, throughout the season for the Packers has been penalties. They racked up 10. They racked up 10 yesterday for 64 yards. And, there was times again where, offensively speaking, they were behind the sticks on first and second down. Do you think these penalties are going to get cleaned up? Do you think they're mental? Do you think they're, what's the deal?
Boy, I think the offensive line has been responsible for quite a number of those penalties the last couple of weeks. And I don't know. I think there's still a lot to be determined there, because, as much as I love David Bakhtiari, he hasn't had a great last couple of weeks, and he's been responsible for some of those bad penalties. He had a bad hold yesterday. He's had a couple bad false starts. So,
Right.
This is a team that for a long time won the penalty battle. They were very, very clean, very, executing very well. And
Right.
I think part of it is because you're learning a new offense and because you're learning a new defense, and you're, especially for some of these new free agents and stuff like that, some of the penalties might be a little bit harder. And I think the other thing is with a new offensive line coach, that's been the other big thing too. I feel like Rodgers' hard count has been kind of getting a lot of people with some false starts. So I think some of that gets cleaned up over time. That I think, getting used to a new offense, getting used to, Rodgers, hard calling every single play. Like he's trying to get some people to jump off pretty much every single play. So for guys like Billy Turner, that's probably it's a little bit of an adjustment. And for Elton Jenkins, like a little bit of an adjustment. But I think, as execution becomes more crisp, a lot of those things kind of get cleaned up. So with any young team, there are going to just be some of those things.
Right. Yeah. And trust me, I'm full of grace. It's just something that, I've noticed it's kind of been a consistent thing for them. And I know the staff is probably, working, to try to clean that stuff up, get that stuff, improve, because I could just imagine that if the Packers weren't in those situations, how much more efficient, they could be on offense. On defense, they've had some ticky-tack penalties called against them, here and there. But for the most part, the defensive side of the ball has done a pretty good job by not, getting a bunch of penalties called against them, especially in coverage and things like that. But, it's just something that, we're going to hope that they just kind of keep improving on all these little details, because, I believe those detailed teams are the ones that are actually going to, be winning, these tougher games, going down this final stretch. And so, hey man, the Packers are 8-2 heading into the bye, with their biggest matchup of the season, against, the currently, as we record this podcast, undefeated 49ers team. And so, that's a big positive, in November right now. So they got some good matchups, coming up, like you alluded to. But the Packers have shown, man, they can beat some really, really tough teams. So they're in a great position, my friend.
They're in a great position, and a lot will be determined in this next couple of weeks, as the Packers will go out to San Francisco and play that undefeated team. So, but you get 2 weeks to enjoy being one of the top teams in the NFC and at least the top 2 seed right now in the NFC playoffs. So I'm enjoying every second of it.
Right. Yeah. Well, so just since you're enjoying it, where are you going on vacation for the bye, Matt?
Somewhere where it's not snowing, because apparently it snowed every single day in the month of November. So,
man,
it's been bad. So, but no, I would love to say that I'm going somewhere warmer, but in all likelihood, staying at home by the fireplace.
Oh, well, hey, listen, if you got probably about $500 for a plane ticket and you got time to head south, it's currently 80 something degrees here right now. So, where I'm recording this podcast. So, I'm in kind of a decent weather for now, but, actually we're getting a cold front coming in tonight. So it's going to shift up, but man, it would be awesome, to do what these guys get to do and go out of town and, kind of, have a nice little mini vacation on your bye week and stuff like that. Very, very cool. Very cool. Yep. So, Matt, you have anything else you want to add, man, to the podcast today?
So I know we've kind of talked about this team's defense the last couple of weeks. It's been kind of a rough sledding. Like we've talked about in this very podcast, it's still a very young defense, and they're learning the ways. And I think they play up when they need to. They played up yesterday. They played up against some pretty tough opponents this year. The one thing I want to leave folks with is the Packers have played the second hardest schedule in the NFL right now, are an 8-2 football team. So the fact that you can say that they've won 80% of their games through 10 weeks with that kind of schedule, that tells you that this is still a dangerous football team. So as we go into the bye, they're only going to get healthier. They're going to have plenty of time to prepare for one of the other teams that's undefeated right now. And, oh, by the way, has played the fourth easiest schedule on the year. So I have a lot of faith in this Packers team. I hope you guys start to learn that over the course of this year. They've played some really good football teams, and they've done really well for themselves. So enjoy 8-2. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Perfect way to summarize the episode. It's most definitely, I think, something that we've all at times, hopefully we haven't taken this journey for granted. But hey, man, they are 8-2. They got again some tough opponents up ahead, but we should have faith in this team because I think they have definitely proven themselves. So, listen, I think that's it, man, for this episode. We're gonna have a bye week. I think we're also going to take a week off and, enjoy the bye with the team as well. But before we sign off, I just want to thank all our military and our veterans as it's, Veterans Day today as we record. We are so grateful because it gives us the opportunity to do awesome stuff like this and talk about the Packers all day. And so we're grateful for our veterans. If you know a veteran, if you see a veteran, just show your appreciation. They're definitely America's heroes. They're definitely people that have afforded us the awesome privileges that we have today. And also, hey, don't forget to give us a follow at PTTF_podcast on Twitter. You can see the pinned tweet there has all the links and areas where you can subscribe to listen to our podcast. Also to follow the rest of the team. There's other guys, a part of this team that are writing articles that have other podcasts that are being put out there as well. So just follow the whole team, retweet this, like it, follow us on Twitter. We appreciate so many of the people that are listening to these podcasts. You guys are the reason that we're putting this stuff out there, and we're definitely grateful to be talking about our favorite team, the Green Bay Packers. So with that, we will be signing off. Matt, hit us up with a big Go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.